Hello everyone, bear with me, let me share my screen. Phrase that many of you will be very used to hearing. Fantastic. Okay, great. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining. Very few minor technical glitches there, so I'm quite pleased with myself. I hope that everybody is keeping safe and healthy, and all enjoyed the fantastic presentations so far today. Really great work from the Beverage Packaging Conference. I'm so pleased to be part of this virtual experience, so thank you for having me. My name is Amelia Dales, Business Development Manager at Garçon Wines, and I'm going to be taking you through a short talk about our sustainable wine packaging solutions for a better 21st century world. Now, don't panic, we're not going to broadband or to dial up with AOL, but I did want to highlight this as a quick comparison point for consideration and how thankful we can be that our internet connection has advanced from dial-up to suit the 21st century demands. The digital age and this connectivity to the world has been fundamentally important during the global pandemic, and today's event simply wouldn't have been possible if we were all still using this technology. And as I say, a consideration point to take forward into the presentation, the global challenges that we face today in a 21st century world, and how the round glass wine bottle, which is a 19th century invention, performs today. Now, the first glass wine bottle was invented by a Brit, this chap here, Sir Kenelm Digby, in the 17th century. And Digby's invention was the onion bottle, a bulbous bottle with quite a long neck, offering a glass bottle that allowed smaller volumes of wine to be stored than was typical at the time. And bottles started to take various shapes and sizes after Digby's onion bottle, which you can see at the front there. And this is as glass blowing became more popular. And in the 19th century, two key French wine producing regions created their own iconic shapes to represent the wines that they produced and grape varieties from their region. This was an advancement of Digby's onion bottle to allow for more efficient transports as wine began to travel much greater distances than just the country in which it was produced. And these two bottle shapes have been adopted right across the world of wine and are still what dominate the shelves today. Now, the history of wine bottles is fundamentally important in understanding why our 21st century solution is a relevant and meaningful advancement. There's a step change innovation from the 17th century to the 19th century, and there must be another step change innovation in order for the bottle to perform well in a 21st century world. We'll focus on the Bordeaux bottle for today. So grape varieties from the Bordeaux region are typically hardier, and so have been planted in many more places across the world. And so this is the bottle shape that's more widely used. And whilst traditional wine bottles rock from an emotional perspective, they look beautiful on a dining table and represent the heritage and tradition of wine. They suck from a functional perspective. They're heavy, they shatter easily, and they're spatially inefficient. This causes both environmental and economical issues. You can see here that there are two pallets of wine been loaded into a shipping container, and that the airbag is having to be inflated to sit between for protection of the two pallets. Now this is a slide taken from the International Organization of Vine and Wine presentation in April. This was a state of the viticulture sector in 2019. This data is showing the global volume of wine that's exported and how that was packaged. So this is just an export volume and doesn't account for movement within the production country, but you can see the data highlighted in green and then the little stat in yellow that I've put in there, and that 53% of wine was exported in bottle. Now, considering the carbon footprint, studies show that transport and packaging are key areas for improvement in the wine industry. So research conducted by the Australian Wine Research Institute shows that 68% of CO2 emissions for wine are caused by transport and packaging. This study shows the same from California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance. The glass bottle is the single greatest contributor to carbon footprint at 29%. If you add transport and packaging to the glass bottle, this accounts for more than half of all of the carbon footprint of wine, 51% here. Writing in Decanter in 2018, world-renowned wine critic Andrew Jeffert highlights the following: something like 33 billion glass bottles will be used for wine around the world in 2018, and the grotesque carbon footprint of almost all of them is unnecessary. And the reason for Andrew highlighting this grotesque carbon footprint as unnecessary is that mass market wines will make up the vast majority of the global volume of wine produced and consumed. And these are wines that are intended to be enjoyed young and don't need to be stored or aged in bottle. A step change innovation is needed, but there's been very little innovation in the world of wine in terms of packaging. Since the 19th century, there have been two key innovations, both that came from Australia. So in 1964, it was the screw cap. Peter Wall from Yalumba as the person who came up with the idea of sealing wine bottles in a new way and took the concept to the French. And then this closure has been widely adopted right across the world. Second innovation, 1965, so quite close together in the last 50 years. Anne Groves came up with bag-in-box, so a flexible bladder packaged inside a box with a tap. And functional in terms of use of space, but missing the key emotional connection that we have with wine, which is the bottle. So much so that the boxes aspire to be bottles by putting images of round glass bottles on the outer packaging. Now for the 19th century bottle, there are so many bottles of wine that are consumed in this dominant packaging format. So it's been around since the 19th century, and yet there are the equivalent of 35 billion bottles produced, consumed globally per year. That equates to about 1.7 billion of bottles that are consumed in the UK. But they've been around since the 19th century, which is a massive problem. And it's a problem because we're in the 21st century and we're facing many of our own challenges and problems in the 21st century. The first of which I want to highlight are climate crisis and resource scarcity and waste pollution, environmental challenges. So the world is on fire. This is just highlighting Europe, but the last few summers right across the world have recorded scorching temperatures. The climate crisis awareness and movement is fueled by fantastic young activists and people such as Greta Thunberg, who really want to protect the world that they'll inherit. Another, Sir David Attenborough, who's done so much great work in raising awareness for protecting the environment. In his words, he says, right now we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale, our greatest threat in thousands of years. And a major issue of the 21st century is climate change, and this is happening now. Data here showing the increasing levels of CO2 in our atmosphere in parts per million. So you can see on the left-hand side, nearer the lower side of the line, the 19th century levels of CO2 were under 300 parts per million. But if you fast forward to present day, the picture is very different. We're over 400 parts per million in stark contrast. And here, a tweet here from Greta Thunberg last year, highlighting that CO2 levels had reached 415 parts per million, and her anger that this wasn't covered more widely in the Swedish press. Sadly, this record has since been beaten as recently as this month, with levels reaching 418 parts per million. And how is the wine industry coping? Well, of vital importance for the world of wine is that global warming is causing existential threats to our industry, but also to the planet as a whole. An example of Bordeaux winemakers having to adapt to increasingly unstable weather patterns by allowing new grapes to grow to protect against the future, to protect for the future of the region. And changing climates have meant fantastic success for English wine, but the Champagne region is under a real threat. It's one of the most cherished globally and is steeped in history. It employs 16,000 wine growers and is valued at 4.9 billion euros. And this is a huge issue and threat for it. The world of wine is, as I say, it's scattered right across the world. We enjoy wine from right across the globe. It's quite interesting that the top 8 wine producing countries produce 75% of the world's wine in 2019. But if you take a look at the geographical locations for the vineyard land areas, wine is grown in a very specific regions and areas, so predominantly between 30 to 50 degrees latitude, either side of the equator. And the wine industry, our industry is under short-term threat to manage increasingly unpredictable weather patterns, which lead to lower yields, but also the mounting concerns over the long-term threat that certain areas will simply become inhospitable for growing grapevines. Here's showing the wine risk index with the areas in red highlighted as extreme risk. Additionally, studies have shown that global temperature rise of just 2 degrees could wipe out 56% of the current vineyard land. Concerningly, a rise of 4 degrees, which is at the higher end of the spectrum, could lead to an 86% loss and that would change the world of wine forever. And the wine industry is aware of this threat, listing climate change as one of the top 3 threats that will have a strong or very strong effect on our industry. As I say, we're in the 21st century facing environmental issues, but also economical issues. So it's a very different world that we live in today in the way that we consume and purchase products. There's been a huge rise in digitalization, leading to continued growth in e-commerce and what we call the Amazon generation. And this has meant, increasingly complex, long and customer-centric supply chains. And many products are simply not cut out for this type of supply chain, like the wine bottle, for example, highlighted here by a very frustrated Amazon customer at the amount of packaging required. But as well as the financial costs, there are also environmental costs to consider, both combined to missed deliveries and inefficient e-commerce. So failed deliveries cost the industry £1.6 billion each year. And what is it that can be done about it? Well, the 19th century bottle is no longer fit for purpose in a 21st century world. So a 21st century world where we're battling these environmental and economic issues, but also one with increasing rise in digital sales. And for wine at the moment in Europe, online wine sales account for just 4% of the total. And COVID-19 has really increased awareness of this. So the wine bottle is the Achilles heel for making a success in e-com. Our industry has experienced this, has had to adapt quickly to new models of business for the last few months. And this has been widely reported. The growth in digital sales for wine is inevitable, and packaging needs to be adapted to make the most of this opportunity. People are searching more, they're wanting to purchase wine online whilst our pubs and restaurants are sadly closed. COVID-19 has accelerated growth in e-commerce. And some B2C platforms in the US have seen, unprecedented triple-digit growth. We're at a tipping point which will result in a more permanent switch to consumer purchasing behaviours. And I think also great to highlight here is that consumer attitudes are changing. And this is a really interesting one from my perspective, at least, with RSA data showing that only 9% of Britons want life to return to normal once lockdown is over. And this data also from Google showing that people are increasingly concerned or aware or wanting to find out more about living a more sustainable lifestyle. The world is experiencing varying levels of impacts from COVID-19, and we're yet to understand the full ramifications. But what is clear is that there will be a new normal. So it's time for the wine industry to have a 21st century wine bottle, and one that supports the wine industry in the 21st century. So we are Garçon Wines, the inventors and creators of eco-flat wine bottles and sustainable wine packaging solutions. That's here. We have granted IP protection for our innovation across the vast majority of the wine consuming world. And so we offer that step change innovation from the 17th century Digby bottle to the 19th century Bordeaux and Burgundy bottles, and the 21st century bottle from ourselves. And importantly, our bottles look beautiful. So full on or straight on, they have the Bordeaux bottle silhouette, but they've just been changed to flat. By going flat, we go flat to save space. So the bottles pack like books, so 40% more spatially efficient than a round bottle of the same volume. We make our bottles from 100% recycled PET, so pre-existing material, not single-use plastic. And we also insist not only that the bottle is made from recycled PET, but that it is recyclable afterwards. So we go as far as ensuring that the cap and the label are both suitable for recycling at home, so that the entire product as is, once the wine has been enjoyed, can be popped straight into the recycling bin at home. By switching to recycled PET, our bottles are 87% lighter. And when you look at a combination of the space and weight savings that can be achieved, extrapolating figures from a WRAP study, we could save more than 500 grams of CO2 emissions per bottle. It's important to highlight, I think, here that plastics is a very simple term for a complex group of polymers. There are various different types of plastics, and some are difficult or currently impossible to recycle here in the UK, and labelling them all under the same name is wrong. Say some are easily and fully recyclable. We use number one, PET, or recycled PET, as it's the number one material of choice for us. And Blue Planet 2 did a fantastic job of highlighting the issue that we have with the mismanagement of this material. being plastic smart is what's needed. So not all plastics are created equal, and those that can do good should be championed. And I think a great example of this, looking to Sweden as a benchmark of successful resource management, the deposit return system that they have in place for glass and for PET bottles, where bottles are widely recycled and collected. And I wanted to highlight here with glass, recycling is not always as simple as it may seem. So it is something that takes a little bit of consideration. So the energy and emissions required to transport can sometimes negate the positive impacts of recycling the material itself, and highlighted here with if the glass has to travel more than 100 miles, there's no environmental advantage. So as I say, using recycled PET, it's a fantastic way of ensuring that we create a use of value and demand for material that's already in circulation. But importantly, using this material allows us to slash carbon footprint further. So the environmental benefits from using 100% recycled PET are clear, and they're shown from the stats on screen at the moment. Moving from glass to virgin PET reduces greenhouse gas emissions through having a lighter material that requires less energy to produce. But then further game-changing savings are made when you move from virgin PET to recycled PET, as this material requires less energy to produce and reduces CO2 emissions again. And looking at this from, this is a piece of information and study done by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation called Completing the Picture, and showing how recycling and resource management is really key in the fight against climate change. So working towards a more circular economy uses resources efficiently, but also helps to reduce CO2 emissions. And the information that they share is that circular economy strategies applied to 4 key industrial materials, cement, steel, plastic, and aluminium, could help reduce emissions by 40% in 2050. So the world's first eco-flat wine bottle, combination of benefits and features, has many applications. So we started with letterbox wine in the UK, which is single bottles of wine delivered seamlessly into consumer homes through the letterbox. This is a product which has seen fantastic growth and interest over the last few months due to consumers in the UK being in lockdown and then wanting to gift or enjoy wine from the comfort and safety of their own home. Some examples here of the collaborations we've done with our launch partners, Bloom and Wild, who are pioneers of letterbox flowers, so combination wine and flower gifting. Also here, collaboration with a Mondelez brand, Green and Blacks, for personalised indulgent wine and chocolate gifting. But this is really just, I guess, the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole host of use cases and applications where flat recycled PET bottles are the sustainable choice. So for onboard consumption, for events and festivals and e-commerce, all sorts of various different things. And just to show a few of these examples, this is Dutch department store De Bijenkorf that have our bottles both online and in store. You can see them on the shelf there in the centre. Also for events and festivals, although that's not taking part, not happening so much this year, unfortunately. But this was last year where we were the sole wine provider for Bristol Pride. Events where glass really is a danger to the punters. Another great one that's one of my favourites. So, by having an innovative product in the bottle itself, you can come up with some really great new ideas. So this is combination food packaging with a bottle of wine and a pizza delivered together. Sounds great for a Friday evening. And then more recently, I guess one of our really great collaborations with Accolade Wines, and this is their brand Anna Kenna, which has gone in store to Systembolaget in Sweden, really showing the benefits of the bottle where it has on-shelf presence, the great utilization of space, which improves availability, but also maximizes the shelf value. And through innovation and packaging in shape and material, single bottle benefits are further amplified through game-changing secondary packaging, making a success of wine logistics. So an example of this is our 10 flat bottle case. And so this is where bottles are packed in 2 directions. So 8 bottles lined up and then 2 either side in the next space. And this case would fit just 4 round glass bottles of the same volume, and we get 10 bottles in there. And this, utilization of space means that we can fit, in some instances, double the amount of wine onto a pallet. And this then, again, has another direct positive impact where we can slash carbon emissions and logistics costs by 60%. And as the bottles pack like books and in two directions as well, they utilize space. So packaging giants DS Smith, they are collaboration partners for our secondary packaging, conducted research into the impacts of empty space and void fill. The center stat there I think is a really interesting one, highlighting that 122 tons of CO2 are emitted per year by shipping empty space. So Garçon Wine's sustainable wine packaging solutions, and I think one to highlight is that true sustainability is triple bottom line, and for us that means a wealthier industry, a happier society and a healthier planet, and all must coexist together to achieve true sustainability. And we do this by, I guess, a little bit of a David and Goliath situation where David and Goliath are getting on. There's no arguing here, and we're David in this analogy. But what it is that we collaborate with giants to offer scalable sustainability, so ensuring that we can have the largest positive impact right across the world of wine. So Berry M&H bottle production in the UK and Amcor in the US. As I say, DS Smith look after our game-changing secondary packaging. We're also part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation C100 network and are members of the Porter Protocol. Most recently, we announced a collaboration with Australian wine giants Accolade Wines, and that will see a number of their brands in our bottles, which is super and really fantastic. But in addition to that, it also they're installing a bespoke bottling line at their world-class facility, Accolade Park. So this will allow us to work with brand owners who want to activate our sustainable packaging solutions. As I say, scalable sustainability is really important. It's fundamentally important in order for us to have the largest positive impact, and it allows us to collaborate with companies across the globe who are all looking to reduce the impact on the world and help mitigate the effects of climate change. We've received Garçon. We've been commercially active for just over 2 years now, but we've received many awards and accolades for what we're doing. We've also had many leading experts saying positive things about us and in support of what we do. I'm so highlighting here Andrew Jefford and Jancis Robinson. We've also had massive love from the media, been covered in just coming up to 600 press articles in the last 2 years. And one I think which is really great to highlight here from the Global Packaging Director at Mintel, David Lissenberger, who is a great fan of ours and carries one of our bottles everywhere he goes, where he states that it's one of the best e-commerce packages that I've seen to date. But I guess one that's probably closest to all of our hearts, the Garçon Wines team, is this letter from David Attenborough. So our CEO and co-founder, Santiago, sent to David a letter and a bottle to say thank you for all of the fantastic work that he's done in raising awareness and helping to protect the environment for the future. And he sent us back a really lovely letter to say that he saw the advantages of using pre-existing plastic, and the additional savings for energy and weight, and then wished us every success with it. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found that informative and enjoyable. If you do want to reach out, please do get in touch. You can use our Twitter handles are there, so you can please feel free to tweet us. We will be listening and looking out. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you to the Beverage Packaging Conference. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.